Lobby group Afriforum has called on all whom it says are serious about human rights to oppose the Basic Education Amendment Bill. According to Afriforum's head of cultural affairs, Alana Bailey, the periodic review of education legislation is necessary. But Bailey says while the bill does contain positive provisions, she believes it's being abused to cover up what she has termed the ANC-led government's hate campaign against Afrikaans schools. Bailey says local communities must retain their right to decide on their school's language policy. Well, she's joining us now to further discuss this. Ms. Bailey, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. Very hard-hitting words in your statement and ahead of Human Rights Day yesterday, and that's, I guess, it's on that occasion that you issued this statement, but focusing on the issue of mother tongue language education in the country. Why, can I just start there, why do you believe that the ANC government has got a hate campaign against Afrikaans schools?
Good afternoon. Yes, we see regularly that Afrikaans schools are under attack, and that when, for example, the Gauteng Department of Education has problems placing students, that they will come out and say, well, there are not enough schools, so Afrikaans schools have to change their single medium policy and become dual medium or parallel medium in order to accommodate more students. But in fact, the schools are already full, and the problem lies on the side of the Department of Education that doesn't build enough schools for the demand of students that are in Gauteng. So we are quite used to the attack
but is it fair,
on Afrikaans single medium schools.
Is it fair for you to describe it as a hate campaign rather than an issue of practical need?
Definitely, because we've experienced, for example, that where the demography of a specific suburb changed and the school wanted to revert from parallel medium English Afrikaans back to Afrikaans only, because the demography of that suburb was very Afrikaans, not very white, but very Afrikaans, the department actually stopped all efforts and refused to change the policy back to single medium Afrikaans. And we see regular statements by the MEC of Education in Gauteng, Panyaza Lesufi, against single medium Afrikaans institutions. And I think it has wider implications than just for Afrikaans, because Afrikaans already is a high function language. We have single medium Afrikaans schools. But if we want to expand that right to more languages in South Africa, we cannot take it away from one community. We have to ensure that more communities have the right to mother language education for a longer time than 4 years.
Yeah, and there are moves towards that. There have been calls. I've done interviews here that it's time for the country to embrace and implement mother language education. I think there are some piloting that's happening in isiXhosa, for example, in the Eastern Cape. Okay, I just wanted to start with those overriding statements because you make them very strongly in your statement about this. So what is it, therefore, about the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill that makes you say people who are serious about human rights must stand up to oppose it? Is it in relation to the fact only of mother tongue language education that maybe it's being excluded or dealt with it differently? Enlighten us, please.
Well, there are two aspects that are of particular concern to us. The one is that where at the moment the final decision about the language policy of a school rests with the school governing body, this amendment bill opens up the opportunity that it will have to lie with a departmental head in each province. So that already takes away the right of the community via its elected governing body to make that decision, and centralizes that decision within the powers of the department. And the second is also the access policy. We see, especially again in Gauteng, that the access policy and the online placement system is full of errors at the moment, and that it is often used with, I can almost call it gymnastics, to put high pressure on single medium Afrikaans schools. And in the process, very often these schools then in the end have to revert to become parallel medium institutions, which eventually become single medium.
Okay, Ms. Bailey, finally, as we conclude, and if you may be brief in response, please, because we're running out of time, this bill is not ready yet for public comment. And you yourself, you say that in your statement. Aren't you jumping the gun a little bit? Why jump the gun? Why don't you wait for it to be issued first for public comment?
We are scared that people will underestimate the importance of this bill and will not respond when it is open for public comments. So we want to create an awareness campaign so that people are ready to give their input and their specific comments on this bill when it eventually becomes available for public comments.
Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Afriforum's Head of Cultural Affairs, Ms. Alana Bailey, expressing how they are approaching this issue around the amendment, the Basic Education Amendment Bill.